Dr. Hannah Kim pressed her face against the observation deck window, watching the massive alien ship glide silently through space toward their research station. After 3 years of searching for intelligent life on Kepler 44b, she never expected visitors to come to them instead. "They're beautiful," whispered her assistant Minji, as the vessel's pearl-white hull caught starlight. The ship moved like liquid mercury, its surface rippling with patterns that seemed almost alive. Captain Jinwoo Park stood behind them, arms crossed, but relaxed. His military training kept him alert, yet even he couldn't hide his excitement. 30 years I've been in space," he murmured. "Never thought I'd see this day." The beings who emerged from the ship called themselves the Valari. They were tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like moonlight on water. Their leader, who spoke perfect English through some kind of translation device, introduced himself with a melodic name that sounded like wind chimes. "We come in friendship," he said, his voice carrying warmth that made everyone in the room smile involuntarily. "Your species shows great promise. We wish to share knowledge." Within hours, the Valari had set up a cultural exchange center, right there on the station. They brought gifts that seemed too good to be true: medical scanners that could detect cancer before it formed, energy cells that never needed replacement, seeds for crops that could grow in any soil. Hannah found herself working alongside Valari scientists, learning about their advanced biotechnology. They explained how they'd visited dozens of worlds, always seeking to help younger species reach their potential. Their homeworld was a paradise where war and disease had been eliminated centuries ago. "You humans are special," the lead scientist told her one evening as they observed cell cultures together. "Most species fear the unknown. You embrace it." Back on Earth, news broadcasts showed celebrations in every major city. World leaders praised the peaceful contact, calling it humanity's greatest moment. Children drew pictures of the graceful aliens in schools. Religious leaders spoke of divine providence. Captain Jinwoo received commendations from Fleet Command. Dr. Hannah Kim was nominated for the Nobel Prize in Biology. The research station became the most important location in human space, a symbol of hope and progress. Nobody noticed the subtle scans running in the background, cataloging human DNA with clinical precision. Min Jae Choi had always been good with languages, but the Valari communication signals were driving him crazy. For 2 weeks, he'd been picking up strange transmissions from their ship during the night cycles, when most humans were asleep. "Just background noise," his supervisor had told him. "Don't waste time on it." But Min Jae couldn't let it go. Something about the patterns felt wrong. He started staying late in the communications bay, running the signals through every decryption program he had. On Tuesday night, working on his 4th cup of coffee, he finally cracked a small portion of their code. The first translated words made his blood freeze. "Breeding stock evaluation complete." His hands shook as he worked faster, translating more fragments. "Genetic compliance markers showing 73% effectiveness. Recommend proceeding to phase 2 within 6 rotations. This species will require minimal conditioning compared to the Zentari." Min Jae printed everything and ran to find Somin Lee, the station's military analyst. He found her in the archives, surrounded by datapads and looking exhausted. "Somin, you need to see this right now." She looked up with tired eyes. "It's 3 in the morning, Min Jae. Can't it wait?" "No. Look at these translations." As Somin read the intercepted messages, her face went pale. "Breeding stock. Genetic compliance. What the hell does this mean?" "I think it means we're not their friends," Min Jae whispered. Somin immediately pulled up her research files. For days, she'd been studying the Valaris claims about helping other species. Something hadn't added up about their stories of 17 uplifted worlds. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her screen. "They claim the Zenthari asked them for help with overpopulation, but Zenthari biology reports show they reproduce slowly. They never had population problems. She pulled up more files. The Cathir supposedly needed help with agriculture, but their homeworld was naturally fertile. The Drakmori asked for medical assistance, but they had already cured most diseases themselves. Same pattern everywhere, Minjae realized. They're lying about being invited. Summon's fingers flew across her keyboard, cross-referencing the intercepted messages with her research. Oh God, Minjae, I think those 17 worlds aren't allied with them. I think they're enslaved. And now they're planning the same thing for us. They stared at each other in horrified silence. Outside, the beautiful Valari ship hung peacefully in space, while inside the station, their friends continued their friendly conversations with unsuspecting humans. We have to warn someone, Soman whispered. Who's going to believe us? Lieutenant Doyen Shin was leading a routine patrol in the Canadian wilderness when his radio crackled with panicked voices from around the globe. Reports flooded in from major cities, New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai. People were collapsing in the streets, but not from violence or disease. They're just standing there, came a shaky voice from Paris. Millions of people, completely still. They respond to simple commands, but nothing else. It's like they're sleepwalking. Doyen pulled his team to higher ground and used binoculars to scan the distant city of Vancouver. Even from 50 kilometers away, he could see the unnatural stillness. No traffic moved. No lights flickered in windows. The city looked dead. Sir, incoming transmission from Space Command. His communications officer called out. The message was brief and terrifying. Valari ships had simultaneously released an unknown gas over every major population center on Earth. Within hours, over 3 billion people had fallen into what scientists were calling a compliance state. They could perform basic functions, like eating and drinking when instructed, but showed no independent thought or emotion. Remote settlements in rural areas seem unaffected. The transmission continued. All unaffected military personnel are ordered to begin immediate evacuation procedures. This is not a drill. Doyen's mind raced. His team was stationed near several isolated mountain communities, loggers, miners, and indigenous groups who lived far from city centers. These people were still thinking clearly, still fully human. Pack everything, he ordered his squad. We're collecting every survivor we can find. Over the next week, Doyen led convoy after convoy of evacuees through hidden mountain passes to abandoned mining facilities and forgotten military bunkers. Each trip was more dangerous as Valari scout ships began patrolling the skies. The worst part was watching the cities change. Massive Valari construction ships arrived daily, setting up strange facilities near population centers. Through telescope observations, the remaining humans watched in horror as their affected loved ones were herded into these buildings like cattle. They're sorting them, whispered Dr. Yuna Park, a scientist who'd escaped from Seoul. Young adults in one group, children in another. The elderly are being moved to different facilities entirely. Doyen clenched his fists as he watched a Valari ship land near his hometown. His parents lived there, his sister and her kids. All of them now reduced to empty shells following alien commands. How many unaffected survivors do we have total? He asked. Maybe 50,000 worldwide, came the grim reply, against billions. Of them and our own people turned into slaves. The beautiful, peaceful Valari had shown their true face at last. Dr. Jiang, you hadn't slept properly in 3 weeks. Deep inside an abandoned copper mine in Montana, she worked by the light of salvaged equipment, trying to understand how the Valari had broken humanity so completely. Another blood sample from the affected zone, her assistant Wanho said, setting down a vial carefully. They'd risked everything to collect samples from compliance victims near Denver.G. Young studied the blood under her makeshift microscope. There it is again. Same nanoscale particles we've seen in every sample. They're not just drugs. They're tiny machines rewriting brain chemistry. Across the continent, Commander Haijin Nam crouched in the ruins of a subway tunnel beneath Detroit, planning the next supply run. Her resistance cell had grown from 12 survivors to nearly 200, but feeding everyone was becoming impossible. "We hit the Valari supply depot tomorrow night," she told her team. "But this time we're not just taking food. We need their technology." Her Lieutenant Seokeen looked worried. "Commander, every raid gets harder. They're adapting to our tactics." "Then we adapt faster," Haijin replied firmly. Back in Montana, Jiang made a breakthrough that changed everything. While studying resistance, fighter's blood, she noticed something incredible. Combat veterans like Haijin showed complete immunity to the nanomachines. So did people with certain genetic backgrounds, particularly those whose ancestors had survived famines and wars. "Evolution," she whispered excitedly to her team. "Humans who survived trauma pass down genetic resistance. The Valari studied our general population, but they missed the survivors." She immediately contacted every resistance cell with her discovery. Within days, they began actively recruiting from specific groups: military veterans, descendants of Holocaust survivors, people whose families had endured generations of hardship. Meanwhile, Haijin's raids were yielding crucial intelligence. Each captured Valari device taught them more about their enemy's technology. The aliens were incredibly advanced, but had one fatal weakness: they'd never fought a species that learned from pain. "Look at this," Seojin said, examining a damaged Valari weapon. "Their technology assumes cooperation. Everything is designed for beings who naturally work together. But we learned to fight each other for thousands of years," Haijin realized. "They can't understand warfare born from desperation." In hidden labs across the globe, human scientists began reverse engineering alien technology with a ruthlessness that surprised even themselves. Every captured device was torn apart, studied, and rebuilt as a weapon. "The hunted were becoming hunters, Captain." Sungwon Ko watched the massive Valari processing facility through night vision scopes, his jaw clenched tight. Inside those walls were 3,000 humans being prepared for transport to alien worlds. Among them was his daughter Yeji, taken from Seoul 3 months ago. "Thermal imaging shows minimal guards," whispered his scout, Jaeyeon. "They're overconfident." Sungwon had spent weeks planning this raid with resistant cells from across Asia. Unlike their previous hit-and-run attacks, this was going to be a full assault. They had modified Valari weapons, homemade explosives, and something the aliens had never faced before: humans fighting for their families. "Remember," he told his team of 40 fighters, "we're not just soldiers tonight. We're parents, children, and friends, taking back what's ours." The attack began at midnight. Sungwon's team moved with precision born from months of guerrilla warfare. But something unexpected happened when they encountered Valari guards. The aliens froze, unable to comprehend the sheer fury in human eyes. "They're hesitating," Jaein reported over radio. "It's like they've never seen real anger before." Inside the facility, Sungwon found rows of humans standing in perfect lines, waiting to board transport ships. His heart nearly broke, seeing them so empty and obedient. But when he found Yeji among them, something changed inside him. "Dad," she whispered weakly, the compliance drugs making her voice small. That moment ignited something primal in some. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was a father whose child had been stolen. The carefully controlled military operation became something else entirely. His team moved through the facility like a force of nature. Every Valari they encountered seemed shocked by the raw emotion driving the humans forward. The aliens had advanced weapons and superior technology, but they had no answer for humans who had turned their pain into purpose. "Sir, we're detecting panic communications from their command ship," reported their communications specialist. "They're calling this unprecedented. They keep using a word that translates to emotional weapon." Dr. Jeong's voice crackled through their radio from the mountain base. "Sungwon, this is incredible. They're studying you in real time. Their entire database has no reference for species that use controlled rage as a tactical advantage. By dawn, they had freed all 3,000 humans and captured enough Valari equipment to arm 10 more resistance cells. But more importantly, they had discovered humanity's secret weapon, the ability to transform suffering into strength. The Valari had conquered 17 civilizations, but they'd never faced a species that got more dangerous when hurt. Admiral Youngji Bay stood before a massive holographic map showing Valari positions across Earth. 6 months ago, she'd been hiding in caves with a handful of survivors. Now she commanded a network of resistance cells numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Status report. She called to her commanders gathered in the converted subway station that served as their headquarters. North American cells have captured 12 major facilities, reported Captain Sungwon Ko, his confidence a far cry from those desperate early days. European resistance has disrupted their supply lines completely. Asian operations have freed over 50,000 people, but the real game changer sat hunched over a workbench in the corner. Engineering Chief Tae-hoon Lim looked exhausted, but excited as he held up a small device that looked like a modified Valari breathing apparatus. Admiral, I think I've cracked their biggest weakness, Tae-hoon announced. These aren't just breathing masks, they're life support systems. The Valari can't survive in our atmosphere for more than a few hours without them. He pulled up detailed scans on his tablet. Their home planet has a completely different atmospheric composition. Higher nitrogen, lower oxygen, and specific trace gases that their biology requires. Without constant atmospheric regulation, they suffocate slowly. Youngji felt a cold smile cross her face. How slowly? About 6 hours for complete respiratory failure. But here's the beautiful part. We can accelerate the process. Tae-hoon held up an aerosol canister. Common earth pollutants become deadly toxins to them. Car exhaust, industrial chemicals, even certain plant pollens. Within days, human engineers across the globe were mass-producing atmospheric weapons. Factories that had once made perfume now created toxic clouds, lethal to Valari biology. Crop dusters that had sprayed pesticides were converted into chemical warfare aircraft. The transformation was remarkable. Humans who had spent months running and hiding now hunted their former captors through city streets. Valari landing parties found themselves trapped in environments that slowly poisoned them while humans moved freely. Sir, Valari command ship is requesting communication, reported their radio operator. Put them through, Youngji ordered. The Valari commander's voice carried notes of panic. Your species. We did not understand. You adapt too quickly. You learn from pain instead of breaking. Youngji's response was ice cold. You should have studied us better before you tried to make us slaves. We wish to negotiate. Negotiation time ended when you drugged our children. She cut him off. Now you get to learn what happens when humans stop being civilized. The hunters had become the hunted. General Sun Wuhan studied the star charts with eyes that had seen too much. Earth was free, but that wasn't enough anymore. Intelligence reports showed 17 other worlds suffering under Valari control, billions of beings living as slaves just like humans had been. Sir, the Valari are retreating to their outer colonies, reported his aide. They're abandoning their forward positions. Sun Wu's expression didn't change. Then we follow them to every system, every planet, every station. What happened next surprised even veteran resistance fighters. Humans began displaying a calculating ruthlessness that seemed to come from nowhere. They didn't just want victory. They wanted to ensure this could never happen again to anyone. Intelligence. Officer Narisong had become something that frightened her own colleagues. Working from a captured Valari command ship, she'd learned to think like her enemy, then turned that knowledge into psychological warfare. Their entire society is built on cooperation, she explained to her team while studying intercepted communications. They share emotions through biological connections. When one Valari feels fear, Others nearby feel it too. She developed tactics that exploited this weakness perfectly. Human strike teams would capture single Valari soldiers, not to harm them, but to expose them to human war documentaries, footage of Earth's bloodiest conflicts throughout history. "Look at this," Nari said, monitoring Valari communication networks. One soldier watched 30 minutes of human warfare footage. Now his entire unit is experiencing what they call predator nightmares. The psychological campaign spread across Valari territories like wildfire. Humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of war against each other. Now they used every brutal lesson learned from their own violent history. General Sunwoo coordinated fleet movements that cut off Valari supply lines with surgical precision. Humans had captured enough of their technology to travel between stars, but they fought with tactics no civilized species would consider. The Kithra rebellion has started, came a report from the Epsilon system. They saw our broadcasts and realized they outnumber their Valari overlords 1,000 to 1. Similar uprisings erupted across all 17 enslaved worlds. The Valari had maintained control through technological superiority and the assumption that civilized beings wouldn't resort to total warfare. They'd never encountered a species that had survived by learning to be monsters when necessary. "Sir Valari, High Command is transmitting surrender terms," reported the communications officer. Sunwoo looked at the message for exactly 3 seconds before deleting it. "No terms. Complete withdrawal from all occupied systems, or we finish what they started." Humanity had awakened something that couldn't be reasoned with. President Kung Jo sat in the emergency command center beneath Geneva, surrounded by screens showing human fleets advancing through 17 star systems. The Valari had been calling for 3 days straight, each message more desperate than the last. "Mr. President, they're offering complete withdrawal," his Secretary of Defense reported. "All human slaves returned, full reparations, and a promise never to contact us again." Kyung-jae stared at the communication panel for a long moment. On the wall behind him hung photos of the affected cities, billions of people who had been turned into mindless drones, children separated from families, entire cultures nearly destroyed. "Put them through," he said finally. The Valari Supreme Coordinator's voice carried a tremor that hadn't been there months ago. "President O, we acknowledge our miscalculation regarding your species. We offer complete restoration of all affected humans and immediate departure from your space." "Miscalculation?" Kyung-jae's voice was deadly quiet. "You enslaved 3 billion people. You turned our children into cattle. You studied us like lab animals. We understand your anger, but surely peaceful beings can find compromise peaceful." Kyung-jae laughed coldly. "You clearly didn't study us well enough. We spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war against each other. Did you think we'd be less creative with our real enemies?" Fleet Commander Ji Ho-yoon listened to the conversation from the bridge of humanity's flagship, a massive vessel built from reverse-engineered Valari technology. His fleet had just entered the Valari home system, where their beautiful pearl-white cities floated in orbital rings around their dying star. "Commander, they're broadcasting surrender on all frequencies," his communications officer reported. Ji-ho studied the tactical display. The Valari homeworld held 2 billion civilians who had never set foot on Earth. Many had probably never even heard of humans until recently. But those same civilians had benefited from the resources stolen from 17 enslaved worlds. "Sir, President O is giving you authorization to proceed," came the secure transmission from Earth. "All ships, this is Commander Yoon," he broadcast to his fleet. The Valari had their chance to be civilized. They chose to be predators instead. Today, we show them what real predators look like. The assault began with precision that would have impressed the galaxy's greatest military strategists. Human ships moved through Valari defenses like sharks through a school of fish. Every space station, every orbital platform, every ship capable of interstellar travel was systematically destroyed. "Sir, They're evacuating civilians to the planet's surface, reported his tactical officer. Jiho's expression never changed. Then they'll be safe there, permanently. The Valari civilization that had terrorized 17 worlds for centuries ended in 6 hours. Philosopher Youngji Kung stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching ships from 17 different worlds dock at humanity's newest orbital facility. 2 years had passed since the Valari homeworld went silent, and the galaxy was still adjusting to its new reality. Professor, the Kithara delegation is requesting another security guarantee, her assistant Hyunwoo reported. They're worried about the Drakmori expansion into the former Valari territories. Yoonji nodded thoughtfully. Schedule a meeting, but remind them that human protection comes with responsibilities. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity had gone from a single-world species on the verge of enslavement to the dominant military power in their sector of space. The same desperate refugees who had hidden in caves and subway tunnels now commanded fleets that could reshape entire star systems. Dr. Ji Yong, now director of interspecies relations, joined her at the observation window. The psychological evaluations are complete, she said quietly. Do you want the disturbing news or the really disturbing news? Start with really disturbing. Our soldiers show no signs of trauma from the war, no guilt, no regret, no psychological damage from what we did to the Valari. Jiang pulled up data on her tablet. It's like they understood, at a genetic level, that everything was necessary for survival. Youngji watched a massive human battleship dock alongside a delicate Zenthari trade vessel. The size difference was startling. Humanity's warships dwarfed everything else in the harbor, and the just disturbing news. The liberated species are more afraid of us than they ever were of the Valari, Jiang continued. The Valari enslaved them, but we completely erased a civilization. They know the difference. A communication came in from the Epsilon system. The Drakmori were expanding too aggressively, threatening smaller species. They wanted human intervention. 3 similar requests had come in that week alone. They all want us to be their protectors, Youngji mused. But they also know we could destroy them just as easily as we saved them. Captain Sungwon Ko, now Admiral of the Third Fleet, approached them with reports from the outer territories. The former Valari colonies are asking to join the Human Protection Zone. That would make us responsible for 12 more star systems. Youngji looked out at the peaceful trade ships and military vessels sharing the same space. Humanity had discovered something about themselves during the war. They weren't naturally violent, but they were absolutely, ruthlessly practical when it came to survival. We didn't want to become the galaxy's police force, she said finally. But maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs. Someone willing to be the monster when monsters appear. The question wasn't whether humanity would accept the responsibility. The question was whether the galaxy could handle what they'd become.